to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
We are live. It is episode 141 of Inside the Game, the podcast. Nate Wangler alongside Jonathan Turner. You know, that lead-in is, I guess, a little misleading here today. It's actually technically Grand Rapids in Howell, Michigan, which is actually right around where our state's capital is, as Jonathan Turner is just mowing away on the other half of the screen. We'll get to that here in a second. Listen, if you like what you're listening to and if you like what you're watching, go ahead and subscribe. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere you can find the National Soccer Network. We're pretty much on all of them. But we got a stack show coming up here today. Amir Bektis will be joining us in about 10 or 15 minutes from now. University of Michigan graduate covering the sport of soccer here in the state of Michigan. Also works in sports journalism with the sports news media as well. We're going to talk to him, get his story. I always like that idea of our my game, my story. That's something we've kind of been pushing on our network. So we're trying to get different people to tell us their story. But for the meantime, you know, on my own personal page, and you know this, JT, from, you know, being the one that hired me and the one that followed along on my own personal page before you brought me into the network. You know, I like doing little segments, you know, wherever I go. I enjoy personally traveling to Nowhereville in the Midwest. I like traveling all over the place. And one of my personal favorites is just doing these little segments on whatever small town that I go to. So we talked about, I was in Fort Wayne, aka Slider Capital USA, at Powers Hamburgers, gave them a 7.5 or something like that. They were okay. I don't know if it was the best I've ever had, but today we're actually getting live and in person a food review. You are at a breakfast place right now, and I could say that this is, I think, the first time I've ever talked to you not in the studio. How was your breakfast? By the way, I am a little appalled by what you got for breakfast, but we'll get to that here in a second. But how are things there?
Breakfast is wonderful. It is what I call the all-American breakfast here in Howell, Michigan.
Okay, all
We'll,
right.
we'll just tilt this down there. That
Yeah,
is it. I mean, it was left of my two Coney dogs.
I'll be honest, Coney dogs isn't the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning, but that's the Detroiter right there in you, I guess. And you were talking
Yeah,
about ranking
which led
different
us
Coney
to.
Islands, but yeah.
Well, it's funny because we were just talking about this because you did your food review, and you know what is Michigan known for, right? Well, specifically Detroit. You know, you've had Detroit style pizza.
Yeah.
You've got I think that there's obviously sports as well in there. But Coney dogs, like those are the two things that when you think of Detroit, you know, you're thinking of Coney's and you're thinking of pizza when it comes to food. I mean, I don't think there's anything else that I can think of in there that would be, you know, relative to what Detroit's known for when it comes to food. It's Coney's and it's pizza. And Detroit style pizza, very similar to that of maybe your Chicago style pizza, except it's not a brick, you know. But the only thing that makes I think us better than Chicago is it doesn't weigh you down. You know, what I mean, um, but anyways, I think it was a great idea. I think we need to travel over Metro Detroit, try some pizza,
I'm
and try
down.
some Coney dogs. You know,
Yeah.
make it a thing, right? And I'm at Aligo's Coney Island, so we were just talking about this. There's a number of Coney Island places here in Michigan. You know, you get outside of Michigan, there's not a lot of Coney Islands. There's a lot of Waffle Houses. You know, but Coney Islands are like a thing here in Michigan, and they serve food. You know, they serve all food all day long. And you know, we should start looking at what those. There's some chains. You know, you got Kirby's, you got Leo's, you got National, and then you've got your mom and pop Coney Island. You know, what's the big names here in Michigan? Like I said, mentioned National, Kirby, Leo's. You've got Lafayette, which is not a chain. It's a big Grand River in downtown Detroit, or actually Lafayette. And then you got American Coney Island, and then you've got in Rochester a place called La Pumas. These are all places that I frequent. you know.
And
And
when you
so
talk about, yeah, when you talk about Coney Islands, I feel like it's like churches in Grand Rapids. Like you got one on every corner when you go to Detroit. And so, now I'm curious, and I know that you're in Leo's right now, so obviously want to upset the good people of Leo's, but where would you put your top Coney spot? I think American and Lafayette is a fascinating dynamic too, because you go to downtown Detroit, they're literally stationed right next to each other, like directly next to each other, American and Lafayette. And so I'll be honest. I mean, I think American was the one that I liked more, but I don't like. They kind of taste similar in a ways. I don't know. I don't. Personally, I didn't see what the biggest differences were. I do think it's an interesting story, but where do you put your top spot?
um, I've been to all of them.
All
But
right.
if I were to put my money on a place right now, it would be La Pumas in Rochester.
All
It
right.
is a little small hole in the wall. When I say hole in the wall, you walk in, it takes cash only. They small little counter, order your food, comes up pretty quickly, and I mean it's quintessential Coney Island, And so and you go in there down the wall, there's pictures of everybody that's ever been that's famous has been there. Um, I'm not on that wall, so therefore I'm not famous, but uh,
Is that why we're
um,
doing all this? So you can just get on the wall at some point? That's actually the career goal.
yes, you have my picture on a wall, not on a bench, but on a wall. Nobody wants their name on a bench at a golf course, right? Nobody.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, no, I think La Pumas is where I put my money. They are unbelievable. Their cheese fries, and they don't like throw on like cheddar cheese. They take that shredded cheese, drop it on there while
oh
the
yeah,
fries are still hot, and it melts while it's on the fries. That's
it's
I'm
perfect.
telling you, it makes all the difference. So it's
Perfection.
really really good. So I
We're
know I'm not gonna be
ramping
good
up.
the entire show, but this has
Yeah.
been phenomenal.
This is well, so I guess it kind of leads me into the next question, and I know that we're not going to have you on for the whole time here today, but we are getting into school season now. We're getting into a different segment of the year. It's much different, I guess. I guess not operationally wise. Everything kind of remains the same in terms of how we put games on. But we are getting into school season now, which means that we're transitioning into a different part of the year, which means more meetings for you, which means getting into more people's ears and figuring out, who exactly we're going to be covering. And obviously, we've been really plugged in with the Michigan high school soccer scene. If you didn't catch our rankings, by the way, go ahead, take a look back at the last episode 140, broke down all the rankings. It really didn't put them in order, just kind of put all the names and the teams to look for on the different lists, Division 1 through 4. There's a lot of good squads out there, and it's going to be another fun year. But let me ask you this: what are you doing in Lansing? Is do you have a meeting in terms of what's coming up for the school season? What does everything look like for you today? What's on the docket?
Yeah, so obviously I'm having meetings a lot, not only in person meetings, but obviously virtual meetings, and so as part of our growth, we're connecting with new universities, new community colleges. And so today I'm meeting with Lansing Community College here in Lansing. I'm meeting with a softball league as well that's looking for coverage. And so it's kind of like actually, it's a three-pronged meeting. It's three different purposes. So a lot of really cool things that we're doing. And then, um, I think for us, I think first I have to say this: we don't have a lot of high school games on the docket this year. And it's not because we don't want to cover them. The reality of our environments is that it costs money to do what we do. And so schools, and especially with like um, local TV now, linear TV, has found a value in covering these games. And so they come in and they're actually offering these services for free, because they have a tremendous amount of advertisers who are looking to leave.
Mm,
These advertisers are looking to leave and giving them a reason to leave. And so what they're doing is you're saying, well, hey, we can keep things rolling by offering these new things. And so they're getting their advertisers to stay on board by doing that. And it's a great model. Um, and they obviously have a big, and you can think about this: NSN, PMG, whatever, local four, you know, local six. I mean, everyone's
right.
grew up watching those television platforms, so it makes sense for someone to want to buy into that. So we do have a game. We have a game on Tuesday for high school coming up. We have 200 broadcasts between now and November. And so we're not like hurting for broadcasts. I mean, we've got 90 hockey games starting next week. We've got Rochester Christian University starting tomorrow. We've got 20 broadcasts for them. Our Oakland University contract kicks off here on September. We're working on another contract that will hopefully announce here sometime tomorrow. And then in October, I mean, we've got a ton of stuff that we've got cooking. Um, so we're not hurting for broadcasts. It's just that I can't go out to these high schools if they're not willing to pay us.
Yeah. Well,
And that's the challenge, right?
Right. Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly it. And I mean, it costs something to do it. I mean, that we've talked about the costs associated with this, and that sometimes can be hard for people to justify and teams to justify. I think what we're doing is obviously unique and different. I do want to talk about that other side though, because I know we are a soccer podcast, and it's always good what we touch on every day. There's a lot of good stuff from yesterday's episode. Again, if you want to go back, ACC preseason rankings. Again, we got the Michigan high school rankings in there. Also talked a little bit about USMNT. Final question I'll leave you with here before I check out. Branching off into other sports and doing other things. I know that obviously you want the network to kind of have its reach in multiple different areas. Has that always been something that you've been doing, or is that something new that you're looking at, just trying to get different leagues and different places that want that coverage and that exposure?
Yeah. So we are launching our all sports platform here next week. That platform is called Sports Nation with a Z. And so you'll be able to watch all sports, from soccer to hockey to basketball, baseball, softball, you name it, all on our platform. So yes, as part of our growth, we always knew that we wanted to be able to be in everywhere. And National Soccer Network, obviously before that, Michigan Soccer Network was our what I consider to be the untapped market. Soccer is still a space that has tremendous growth potential. But we also realized that with what we're doing here and did here in Michigan, and then with the National Soccer Network, that there was this chance for us to also expand into other sports. And so, yes, the hockey is just one part of that. We have football coming, we have basketball coming, we've got softball coming, and so you can go on Roku and you'll be able to watch Sports Nation, and that will allow us to offer our services to every sport in the country, including in the space of esports,
Mm.
right? Which we've been talking about. How do we incorporate esports into our platform? And so what I can say also is that coming here in the very near future, hint, hint, you'll be able to watch me, Nathan, our crew, and other people playing FIFA and other sports on our platform on a daily basis, right? So, hop in and watch your favorite games and watch them being played on our platform, which is a big deal. People like watching that stuff. And so that'll be something that we do offer here in the very near future.
We're going to be Twitch streamers now, I guess. So we're getting into that area. It's not going to be very fair.
I do a slight Twitch. I mean,
it's not. Hey, man, I'll try not to run you off the field. Jonathan Turner joining us, our own director of broadcasting, as a guest today. Enjoy your day. Have fun at your meetings. I'll chat with you tomorrow morning.
Boom. See you guys.
Good stuff. See ya. Well, good stuff as always. Enjoying his coney, his breakfast coney. I can't say that I've ever had a coney for breakfast. I think that's the first time that I've ever seen that. That's impressive. Different. I mean, I can't say I haven't had lunch for breakfast before. I mean, there have been days that I just, wake up late and it is what it is. Yeah, I'm talking about my time in Fort Wayne over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I wasn't necessarily an early riser on Saturday, so that's when I had that Powers hamburgers. That was my first meal of the day. That wasn't meal number 2 or meal number 3 or anything else down the line. That was number 1. And so I'm normally a sweet guy with a lot of that stuff, but that day I had to switch it up a little bit. But big thanks to Jonathan Turner and Amir Bektis joining us shortly. It is something to keep in mind, though, when we talk about this. And I know that JT obviously is having his meetings and reaching out to these different people. What we want to do here at the network, and we talked about this when we first introduced this show, the importance of leaning into the new age of where the broadcasting world is. in utilizing the tools that we have at our disposal to make sure that we can get our reach out to those who need and want coverage. And now in the world in which we exist now, everybody is live streaming. Everybody has some sort of feed. Even younger kids. I talk to these parents about these softball leagues and these other younger leagues. They all have live streams. They all have live stats, which is something that just I used to have some dad sitting in the stands scoring the game in his lap. And that was the live stream that we had. Yeah, we kept stats and did everything, but there was no such thing as live streaming. It's a different ballgame now. So that's why we're reaching out to all these different places and trying to figure out a way to break into these different markets, because it makes all the difference in the world. And part of getting those stories out is meeting people who have stories to tell. And one of those people is joining us right now. That's Amir Bektis. Amir, what's going on, my man? Welcome on.
Hey, Nate. How's it going? Thanks for having me today.
Good, brother. I'm happy to have you along. Obviously, I know a little bit about your story. You and I have talked a lot in the past. You're a frequent flyer at the stadium, the minor league baseball stadium for the West Michigan Whitecaps. So you and I know a thing or two about each other, and I know you've been hard at work with everything that's going on in the sports world now. Let me start there, because I know we're ramping up. We're getting into not only college football season, but everything else that's going on there. And you have a new job calling games at Forest Hill Central soccer for Paul Kramer, which I got the opportunity to do that last year. Obviously, Paul and I are pretty closely connected, but how's everything been from your perspective once we get into this transition season, kind of going from baseball to everything else we got going on?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Fall time is really the best time of the year. Football's kicking off. Soccer's already kicked off. You mentioned Forest Hill Central. So they already had a couple of games this past weekend. They looked really good. And then on Monday, they played South Christian. They won 3-0. They have a big matchup coming up on Friday against Rockford. That should be a good test. But this team, Paul Kramer's got a really special team this year, I believe.
We were actually, and I had mentioned it back on episode 140, we actually broke down our teams to watch across the MHSAA, and Forest Hill Central was on that list. And I mean, between them and what Forest Hills Northern is doing, it's kind of crazy, because it's kind of creating this clash between the two, because we saw what Northern was able to do in making it all the way to the state finals last year. And there's some real talent. There's some real good teams developing over on the west side, and it's kind of creating this real competitive space. Now, obviously, it's one thing to get out of there, and then you have to obviously deal with the east side and everything like that. There's a level of talent and depth over there. But between those two sides, I was a little surprised that Northern emerged the way that they did. But that's just kind of how it goes, especially when you get into the situation of everybody can make the playoffs. Is there anybody that Paul Kramer pointed out specifically? I mean, what does he like most about what they bring to the table for Central this year?
He's got depth this year, that's for sure. He's got a lot of depth. I'll give you one name to keep an eye on, Jack Beckert. He had 2 goals on Monday, and I think that kid's going to be special. There's a lot of players on this team that could make some noise, but I'll say Jack right now is a player to keep an eye on for sure.
And they have, I mean, even last year that they had depth. I feel like they've created this system where they can just churn out players left and right. Like they just have it moving in the right direction. And I will say this very quickly before we dive into the specifics of your story. One of my favorite things in covering them last year and even getting to talk to Paul was the story about how he lived in Michigan, but then his family moved away from Michigan, moved to what? Hawaii, I think it was.
Yeah, Hawaii. That's originally where he's from.
Yeah, right. So they moved back. And I think I remember reading the story because there was a really good write-up on him. I don't know if it was on MLive or somewhere else, but talked about how his parents just got sick of the winter. So that's why they wanted to get the heck out. I'm like, that's relatable. I can get in on that. And I know obviously we're getting into September and it's going to get chilly here pretty quickly, but that's just one of the fun things that I love about Paul. I just think he's a great coach, and I think he's a leader of young men. So obviously it's been fun to watch the development of that program over the course of the last few years. But getting more into your story, because you played at Caledonia. And I think one of the things we always talk about here on the National Soccer Network, and it's a big part of our marketing push, is, my game, my story. We want to get people's stories out there, because that's the thing. And, I've said this before on my own personal page. I've said this before in my broadcast. Most favorite part in my mind of what we get to do, what I get to do specifically, is tell stories. I mean, that's the thing that kind of ties everything together. That's what makes sports sports, because you understand that there's a human element to it. And that's what makes it fun and exciting. And that's what gives you the opportunity to really cheer for people and get behind people. So, yeah, obviously, you played for a stretch of time. Now you're a member of the media. That feels like in a lot of ways a natural transition for athletes. But I feel like your story goes a little bit further back than that. It's not just about the game, but it's everything that brought you into the game initially. What's your story? Take me back to the early days.
How much time we got to talk about the story today? And like how in depth do we want to go? But yeah, no, at Caledonia,
as in depth as you want to.
At Caledonia, yeah, I got to play varsity soccer there for a couple of years, and yeah, then I transitioned over to Michigan. Never really planned on getting involved in sports media so early on, because you just want to extend that playing career as far as you can. But growing up, I was always watching these games with family and friends, whether it was soccer, football, basketball, whatever sport was on. And I would say what the broadcasters would say, and people around me were like, what, why don't you try to do this? I'd always brush it off, be like, but then when I went to Michigan, there's this thing called Festifall, where they get all 100 plus clubs out on the Diag, which is like the center of campus on Michigan Central Campus. And I came across the student radio, and same thing. I was kind of just like brushing it off. The people were recruiting me. They're like, hey, come on and talk about how bad Odell Beckham Jr. is on our sports radio.
Right.
And the friend that I was with, he's like, why don't you do that? So I ended up putting my name on the sheet that they had on that board, and kind of the rest is history from there. Got to call a lot of big Michigan games, whether that was some soccer games all the way up to the Orange Bowl in 2021.
Yeah.
So, and a couple of Big Ten championship games, and it was a good run there. And now just trying to chase after this professionally. Started working at Wood TV8, the local station here in Grand Rapids. Reached out to Jack Doles during COVID, actually. So while I was at Michigan, COVID hit and we had no content. So I ended up just DMing Jack, being like, hey, do you want to do like a little socially distanced sports talk? So we did that, talked about half an hour about Jack's extensive history and all of the Olympics he's covered, the national championships. Like, Jack is the godfather here in Grand Rapids. So yeah, I was able to talk to him, and then he ended up being like, hey, you want to come and help out with the football frenzy? So I started covering high school football games, and then just got involved more. And he gave me opportunities to go cover Michigan State, from all levels, to football, basketball, hockey, and now fully invested in the West Michigan sports scene. And I love the sports scene here with all the minor league teams, with the Whitecaps being good this year, the future of soccer coming to Grand Rapids, and then you got the Rise. Grand Rapids Griffins have been here; they're already established, so it is a great sports scene here.
Yeah, and obviously coming up on Thursday in West Michigan, we're going to be honoring those teams. I do think it's fascinating, though, when you talk about just kind of stumbling upon it, because to go from stumbling upon it and just wanting to get involved to all of a sudden doing the Orange Bowl, which, I saw that broke the record, was 80,000 listeners or something along those lines for that game. I mean, that's crazy, my man. So to go from that to obviously where you were there, incredibly jealous being a Michigan fan that you got to be a part of that. But that's something it's really special, and it's something that I'm sure made a mark. And honestly, you were there during some of the best years of that team and that program. So to be able to see that and experience that, how did you get past the nerves of all that? Is it something that it's just come naturally to you?
The nerves come every game, but even now, I mean, after doing this for 4 or 5 years now, it's just like there's just so much excitement, and then you just have to remind yourself that at the end of the day, this is a game, and you want to bring the energy to the listener, and it's not that serious. It's sports,
right? Well, and I guess the ultimate question is, I do want to kind of dive deeper into your background, because I do think it is a very interesting story, and I think where we are right now as a society, I think it's even more of an interesting story. Exactly what your background is and your parents. And I do want to touch on that a little bit. But, you know, for you, I guess looking forward, do you see yourself in sports reporting? Do you see yourself in play by play? I know you've been able to obviously turn what was a playing career at Caledonia into a career in the media at Michigan. What's the ultimate goal for you when you look forward and what do you want to take out of this?
Play by play is the goal.
Yeah.
That is the goal, to get into ideally either football or basketball, but open to all sports. I mean, doing Forest Hill Central soccer this year has got me excited because I'm able to, kind of like give back almost and help Paul Kramer just really establish that sports network. Kind of like you were talking earlier, just it's an evolving field. And it's like before there were no broadcasts for high school sports, really. I mean, football would get the Friday night lights, but they really wouldn't broadcast like the smaller level sports. But yeah, deeper into my story. So my parents come over from Bosnia back during the war in the 1990s. So they ended up immigrating here, and it's crazy to just like listen to my parents' stories, my family story, just anybody that's immigrated here to the States, coming to America, not knowing a single word of English. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. So the go-to story that my grandpa tells me is when they came here to the US for the first night, they were staying at a hotel, and my mom's name is Dina. So it's my mom, my two uncles, my grandparents staying in a hotel room, and somebody's knocking on the door saying dinner. And my grandpa, they don't know English. They thought they were calling my mom, Dina. So they're like, yeah, she's here. But no, and then they're like, no, it's dinner. Like, we're going to serve food. And yeah, it's just like crazy to see how you go from not knowing English, really not having anything. Like, you could only come here with whatever you could really truly carry on your back. When I graduated from Michigan, I ended up taking some grad photos with like the jackets that my dad and my grandpa wore when they came here to the US. So that was just like a cool moment to show like, hey, this is like what they came with. And now here I'm leaving with 2 degrees from the best university in the world. So, and yeah, no, like play by play is the goal, to end up doing that professionally. But, just making my parents proud and doing the American dream is truly the goal.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have 2 brothers too. And I think, one of the things about family dynamics, especially when you talk about, where your parents came from, culturally speaking, and I'm not first generation, so I can't speak to that, but what I do know is, at least in talking to my family members, but on my mom's side, they're Sicilian. I mean, my grandparents came here without a lick of English, kind of like that. They had to find a way to establish themselves, to find a way anyway to make it work in the new country. And I think when we talk about the American dream, I think some people are like, well, is it dead? Is it a real thing anymore? I wouldn't say it's dead. I'd say it's very much alive, but it's different with the current status that we have. It's different with where we kind of are currently. And I think some people maybe look at that and wonder if that's still a thing, but I think you're kind of a living, breathing example of that. How have your brothers made a difference on you pursuing what it is that you're pursuing, and maybe, instilling some of that competitive spirit in you? Because brothers can do that.
We've been competitive since day one.
I bet.
Growing up, we would always be playing like whatever sport we could do in the house. Like, if there was a ball around, we were playing. Like, I know when I was 10, we were finishing the basement in our house, and we got this like little, basically like foam football from one of the Rampage games, the former Grand Rapids Rampage. And here we are, just like shooting on what ended up being our closet. And it would get competitive. It would get heated. I ended up breaking my big toe actually doing that. So yeah, no, I mean, we have like, me and my brothers are super close, super tight. Like, we talk every day, we text every day. My two brothers are now coaching at Caledonia, so
Oh, wow.
we might have a little rivalry there going. So my middle brother Anel, he is the JV coach over at Caledonia, and my youngest brother Armin, he just graduated last year, so he's going into a sophomore year of college, and he's going to be like an assistant, one of the assistants for Anel on the JV team. So we're super involved now in the West Michigan scene, and it's kind of unfortunate that the two teams won't see each other this year. Maybe in the playoffs, though.
There you go. Yeah, because everybody sneaks in, so you might have an opportunity there. I do think it's worth mentioning because of where your parents came from, and I do think that is fascinating with you being a first generation college student. It's different, and I'm sure they had to grind their way into a spot to be able to bring up not only you but your two brothers and make it work that way. And so, you know, these are the kind of stories that I think are worth definitely highlighting and spotlighting, and yours is one of them. And one of the things that I think is relevant, or at least it ties into what your story is, you know, when you look at Bosnia is one of those areas where when you talk about West Michigan specifically, I mean, they're amongst, I think, 3 or 4 different countries in terms of the most influence or people moving to this area. There's a big Bosnian community in West Michigan. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And obviously, you know, your grandfather and your parents being a part of that. But the other thing about Bosnian culture is that, you know, soccer, I don't know if they call it football over there, is the most popular sport. I mean, that's something that, you know, we always talk about it on our show, and we want the game to grow in the United States, right? Naturally, that's good for us. That's good for business. But for you, you know, that's something that's always been deeply ingrained into the culture over there. And now your brothers are part of it. You're a part of it. You've been a part of it. How did that play into the cultural significance of soccer? Ever play into your decision to play and obviously pursue a playing career at Caledonia? Is that something that you were kind of born and raised with? What's your background when it comes to that sport specifically?
It's in the blood.
Yeah.
It truly is like in the European blood. And I mean, it all really started with my dad. Like, he signed me up for ASO and was my coach for basically the whole time while I was there. It was kind of funny because everybody wanted to play for him because, like, he just loved the game so much, understood the game, was able to really teach the game. Because, like, one of the issues with ASO is just like you can get anybody. So sometimes it's kind of like hit and miss what kind of coach you can get. Is it going to be somebody that like truly lives, breathes the game, or is it like somebody that's like reading the playbook or the rules as they're teaching? So
Yeah,
him playing soccer over there, and then coming here, teaching me and my friends how to play is kind of what's was the foundation for my passion for sports. That's why I kind of like got into football, like American football, not the European football, but like American football. My dad didn't really know about, but here we are now watching every Lions game, every Michigan game, every whatever primetime game. So I'd say soccer was the foundation for my passion for sports.
and if you look at the sport too, I feel like it is kind of the embodiment of, if we want to call America the melting pot, you know, look no further than that sport, right? Because when we do these USL games, or really whatever game in whatever league, it's a lot of the same. You have players from everywhere, and I think it's something that it creates a unique challenge for American broadcasters, but at the same time, it's also one of those things where you recognize that that's the kind of impact that this sport has. And not only that, but I think more than that, it's kind of the international language in a way. I think when you talk about sports, it's the reason why the World Cup is what it is. It's the reason why it's so many people, you know, fall in love with the game when they watch the World Cup. It's why it's such a big deal every 4 years. It's because it brings cultures and nationalities and people together to play a sport that you don't all need to speak the same language. If you can play, you can play. And I remember watching the Court of Gold documentary. And I don't know if you've ever gotten the chance to see that, but it was it's about the U.S. men's national team, the basketball team, at the most recent Summer Olympics. And I remember Kevin Kevin Durant talking about, when he got there and he kind of looks up and he sees all the different people that have come out to watch them. Society's cultures bringing people together for a sport, for basketball, is something that made him emotional, right? Because it is bigger than just the US. It is bigger than just our community. It's the entire world. We're just trying to get people in a lot of ways to try to grow that here in the United States. And it's not the easiest thing in the world, obviously, because we know where it stands in terms of cultural relevance, but in terms of the sport itself, in assimilating into American culture, do you feel like soccer might have been kind of the driving force in some ways in getting, you talked about your dad coaching, but getting you guys involved in the American community?
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because like you not only like playing like organized soccer, but being, going to the park back before the iPad babies and just going to play, whether it was pick up soccer and then being like, okay, well, let's go play basketball. Like me and my brothers were always like athletes, and we still are, always trying to play competitively. Every Thanksgiving we will get all the cousins and uncles together and we'll do a turkey bowl.
Nice.
We'll do a turkey bowl in the backyard, but kind of like how we're talking about soccer and like what it's done to the community here in the States. I go back to the GRFC days, like when they first started and they were getting 5,000-7,000 people at Hausman Field. And like just the kind of like the shock that it had to like the non-traditional fan, where they're like, wow, these guys will meet up at a bar hours before the game and then they'll walk over chanting like what is that? So that was really cool to see, and how like people were just like, is this normal? And then you'll turn on a Premier League game and these guys are chanting the whole game. Like that's like one of the big differences between like American sports and like a game over in Europe. It's just like how these fans are like super invested. I know like an issue that people have been talking about on Twitter the past couple of years is like with how expensive tickets are getting for these events. Are they becoming like too corporate? Like you don't want to have fans like standing up and chanting. Their stadiums are now making it. There's so much going on in a stadium where like the game's almost not becoming like the priority. Like you got the suite. You'll go over and grab some food, grab some drinks, and then like, oh, Steph Curry just hit the game winner 3. Cool. It's not the priority, where it's like if you go to Manchester, like whether this team is good or bad, they're gonna let you know for sure.
Right. And I think we're pricing real fans out of a lot of stuff. I mean, I see that with the Lions, and we heard a lot of people talk about that last year, and especially with the playoff run, it kind of adds to that. And it's hard because it's a business, and obviously you want to pitch the business component of it. You want to make your money, but at the same exact time, you also want loyal fans in there, because that's what makes the atmosphere what it is, and so I think some of that, especially when you talk about it, I know there's been a lot of people that have mentioned that, like the only thing in American culture, I feel like that even comes close to what it is you were describing, like in the Premier League, is college football.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of like the last line of defense when you talk about, tickets are still somewhat affordable. Obviously you have students that fill up a lot of the seats, if not the majority of the seats in these situations. And so that's what kind of allows that sport the opportunity to really flourish. But I think it's interesting that you brought up GRFC, because I do want to talk about that very quickly, because obviously you have a unique perspective on this. When we talk about the game from a national perspective, that's one thing, but we were just showing off the all-new Alumni 5 Field in Detroit that Detroit City FC is going to be playing at in Corktown, which is, I think it's a 15,000 seat stadium. So I'll be interested to see if they fill that up and how they do. And, I think Detroit is you talk about a city that has grown leaps and bounds in the sport of soccer. I think Detroit is certainly it. Now, does the media actually pay attention? I mean, when you have the Tigers doing what they're doing, when you have the Lions doing what they're doing, we know what the big money markets are when it comes to the Detroit media. So they're probably not going to take a ton of time to talk about Detroit City FC. However, over here in Grand Rapids, and you mentioned it earlier, right? The beauty of this city is the minor league markets. You know what I mean? Like, people around here are so invested in just the teams that play here because they're ours. You know, like, we don't have to drive 2.5 hours to go watch this team or that team. And I'm very jealous of people who grew up in the East Side because they have the capability of just being like, yeah, you know, I've been to 5 or 6 Red Wings games. I go to 2 Tigers games every year. Like, really? Like, I haven't been to one in 5 years. Must be nice, you know, like, a little bit of a different story coming from this part of town. But that's the reason why I think everyone's so deeply invested and cares so much in the minor league market over here, because there are teams, you know, there are Grand Rapids based teams. And, you know, I've seen attendance go up at Gold games, obviously the Rise. I mean, I never really realized how much of a community volleyball was. Like, it's kind of crazy. I wouldn't say it's a niche audience, sure, but it's a passionate niche audience, to say the least. Baseball, we know the Caps have been around. They've been a staple. You know, I do think to that point of there's a lot going on, so maybe people aren't, that's baseball. It's a passive watch, you know, but there's a lot of different stuff. And now we have the new Grand Rapids MLS Next Pro team that's coming to town that will be playing at the new stadium downtown. And I've seen the renderings and I've seen the pictures. And the one thing that I always argued is, you know, especially in a city like this, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, if you make it look nice, if you put it in a good location, they will come, they will fill it out. And with it being downtown and around everything else that we got going on down there, and again, keep in mind, we're Beer City, USA. I mean, you don't have to walk very far to find a bar, to find a restaurant, to find something else. That is, in my mind, not just a step forward. That's a giant leap forward in terms of soccer in our community exclusively. All right. Forgetting the rest of America here for a second, just talking about Grand Rapids exclusively, that building in that place, I think, is going to make a huge difference in bringing the sport just up another step in the Grand Rapids community. What's your take on everything that's going on there, on the building development, stadium design, team, everything else? Because I'm excited, and I'm kind of on the hunt right now to figure out who I got to talk to get me in the door there. But how do you feel about everything that's going on over there? It's exciting stuff, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I'm excited for that stadium to be built. Driving down US 131, now you can see kind of like where they're going to be laying it out, because they got the fencing out there. They got construction going. It's exciting to see the renderings of the stadium. I think they look beautiful. The Amway Stadium. I kind of wish there was a way that they could expand it to make it bigger. If there was a potential opportunity that an MLS team comes here, like the MLS 1 team, just like the pros, having them here instead of the MLS Next. Now, like going back to GRFC, like when they were putting 5,000 to 7,000 fans in that stadium.
Houseman, yeah,
in Houseman. So I think that the team is going to get great support from the community. I mean, we saw it with the Rise being new to Grand Rapids and not really knowing that like volleyball was that big of a deal.
Yeah,
and like they were consistently filling that stadium too, Van Andel Arena. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see, and just the impact that it's also going to have into the community. Because one thing that I've also noticed now covering high school sports for the past couple of years is boys soccer doesn't get like the glamorous championship game. Like they'll choose like a high school, and that's where the championship game is. So soccer is always kind of put on the back burner. I know last year for districts, there was a school that was hosting a district champion or a district semifinal game, and the JV football team was still on the field playing. So a soccer playoff game had to be like delayed. They're like, yeah, you can't take the field. We still got JV football going. So like, okay, there's just like this shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be having these schedule conflicts. So with that Amway Stadium being built, I hope to see that that's where the state finals get to be played, because these kids like work hard and they should be able to play at a stadium like that rather than like another high school. Like there's nothing wrong with these high schools, but you know, football goes to Ford Field. Basketball state championships are held at Michigan State. Girls soccer is held at Michigan State. Baseball, softball, Michigan State. Wrestling, individual wrestling is at Ford Field. Hockey is at the U.S. Development Stadium over in Plymouth. So it's like boys soccer really gets forgotten about.
Yeah. And I we had our state championships last year. It was a beautiful facility, but again, to your point, is a high school stadium. You know what I mean? Like, I think one of the greatest parts of in me just looking back on my high school days, I played football, and I think one of the greatest pleasures was being able to, when you get to the end of the line, play in a place like Ford Field. I mean, I know that place just absorbs sound, but it even for a high school audience, it can get loud, and so to be in an environment like that, to walk those halls and to be in that locker room is something that is super special. And obviously you're not going to get that in soccer in Michigan, just simply because there just isn't that history there. Been a lot of great players that have come from this state, and we've talked about that on our show before, but that you're not necessarily going to get that. So create a space like that. I agree. And I think one of the areas that makes it hard when you talk about growing is there's not a whole lot of soccer specific facilities in the United States. Like you don't have like futsal courts and stuff, and that's not, you have these open areas, and so obviously you can just set up and play. You were talking about pickup a little bit earlier, but I think one of the things that, and I've mentioned this on the show before, and I'd be interested to get what your opinion is, where this game begins to start to take legs and really take off. Yes, the World Cup is going to make a difference. Growing Major League Soccer, the USL, is going to make a difference. Trying to find superstars that we can latch onto as an American society and maybe marketing them a little bit better, I think is something that's going to make a big difference. And I think that's something that obviously, when it comes to Major League Soccer and these other leagues, they got to figure out, because there's just not a whole lot of, if I look at the media, there's not a whole lot of, hold on, there's a spider here. I got to kill him. He's a big boy. All right. Got him. We're good. All right. Anyways, as I was saying, sorry, I was trying to talk to you, but I'm also looking at him at the same time. It was not good. But I think, yeah, take care of business. I did it. We're good. But I think the grassroots perspective is everything. I think because when you talk about where we are, would I be a fan of Major League Soccer? There's no team here. There's no team in Detroit. Yeah, we got Detroit City FC. I've never had the pleasure of going and watching any of their games. I'm sure I would be a fan. But when we're talking about the highest level league, and again, a league that doesn't have pro rel, like you can't just start a team and win your way into the top division. That's not how it works in the United States. It's tough for me to get on board with any major league squad. I'm not going to cheer for Columbus. I'm never really seen a game in Chicago. So, I mean, unless I just like Messi and, like these kids, and I'm just like, hey, I just want to cheer for Miami because they have Messi. I mean, it's a little bit different, but you're not actually a Miami fan. As soon as you take Messi out of that equation, and we've said this on the show before, where does your fandom go? Well, it probably goes wherever he goes, so that's one thing. But in order to get people truly involved in falling in love with the sport, which I think is when we talk about that side of it, I've been involved in this game on this network for the last 2 years. I could say confidently that this sport has grown on me a lot, but I would also say that there's also a level of adoration and kind of love that's come with the last 2 years and following it and being around it. Am I going to claim to be the most knowledgeable person in the world? No, because I'm not. And nor would I ever claim that. But the beauty and the simplicity of the game is something that is kind of worn off on me a little bit. I mean, it's something that I really enjoy, and I would love to be a part of an atmosphere like that. But I think it starts with getting people in these communities, somewhere like Grand Rapids, a team of their own to get behind and cheer for. I think that's where it really starts. Because even from a baseball perspective, I mean, I can't tell you how many people who in a lot of ways fell in love with the game or just being around the game just from going to a place like LMCU Ballpark growing up. Just seeing the Whitecaps, seeing a game, being in the environment. That's the most important thing in my mind. From a grassroots perspective, do you think that's something that can move the needle forward in terms of just getting soccer to that next level here in the United States? Just giving a community to cheer for, someone to rally behind.
I think so. And with the Whitecaps example, it's like, okay, here in Grand Rapids, we're kind of in the middle of like distance-wise of how long it would take to get to Detroit and Chicago. Sure, Chicago might be a little bit longer, but like with having the Whitecaps here, a lot of people are Tigers fans because it's like, okay, we get to watch this minor league team. So it's like, we had the pleasure of watching Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Jose Briseño here in Grand Rapids and being like, okay, this is the future of the Tigers. Like, this is why I'm going to tune into the Tigers. So if you're a casual baseball fan, having the future of this team, of this organization here, it's like, okay, now I'm going to become a Tigers fan rather than, hey, like, I'm not really paying attention to what's going on in Chicago with the Cubs or the Sox.
Mm-hmm.
So, having an MLX Pro team here, I think is going to be huge. And having the World Cup here is going to help it even more. Like, sure, say what you want about the U.S. team next year, if they're going to be prepared or not. But
yeah,
having the World Cup here is going to be awesome. And I think the closest city to us here in Grand Rapids is going to be Toronto. To go watch the game. But, you mentioned Messi. So I think the Messi effect is very interesting because when he came over to play for Miami, they it was difficult to get tickets and tickets were super expensive. And like we were seeing him on TV. But now since they have the Apple contract where it's like you have to have Apple TV to go watch him, people aren't really like tuning in, and the Messi effect has kind of died down. And like you can look at it with the Club World Cup with Inter Miami opening up at Hard Rock Stadium, which is like what 4 times or way bigger than
right.
the stadium that they play in Fort Lauderdale. And like tickets were basically like cheap, like because if you're living in Miami, you're like, well, why am I going to pay these crazy prices to go watch them at Hard Rock Stadium when I could just go in Fort Lauderdale and watch them there?
Yeah.
So you can see like the effect kind of like dying down, and it also falls on the media to really broadcast these players and market them to us. So, and it's like another side note is like with the way like ESPN does stuff. So ESPN is the home of UFC right now, and UFC just signed a mega deal with Paramount Plus and CBS. So it's like, okay, how is ESPN going to advertise the UFC now to the fans? And same thing happened with like NHL when NBC was the host of NHL. Like ESPN didn't really care too much about hockey, but ever since hockey's been on ESPN, like you're seeing the Connor McDavids of the world.
Yeah. And that's again, just continuing to try and break that down and market those players better. And I think that's kind of where it starts. You got to get people in front of you. You got to market the superstars. But I think part of it is we got to develop our own. And I think we're getting better. When you talk about the U.S. men's national team, regardless of whether or not they're ready come a year from now, I just think they haven't found out a way to win together. I think that's the biggest thing in my mind, but it doesn't mean that the development, that the talent, that everything else isn't continuing to move in the right direction. But we can save that conversation for another time. Before I let you go here today, what are the next steps for you? I know I'll probably see you around the ballpark and other places. I know that you and I are in pretty constant communication, but what are the next steps? What is Amir Bektis up to this upcoming year, and what are your plans going into 26?
So be broadcasting for Forest Hill Central soccer this upcoming year, and I'm super excited for that because the team's going to be good. I believe they're going to be really good. And then with football kicking off, being able to go cover the games for Wood TV8, and then whenever Fox Big Noon Kickoff is in the Midwest, going to cover that. So when you see stuff on Fox social platforms from the sideline, just know that I'm the guy behind the cameras. so it's like my identity has been revealed now, and then just kind of seeing where everything is going, being agile and just going with the flow is kind of the mentality I have. And, whatever opportunity comes my way, if it's a good one, take it and see where it goes. Cause it's very difficult to plan a solid like route in this type of world and this type of age right now. So
just got to go get after it. That's the world of sports. But Amir Bektis, thanks so much for joining us here on episode 141.
Nate, thank you for having me.
Hopefully have you back around a little bit more. That wrap things up here today. Again, check us out, YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook, wherever you have social media, we're on it. That's another edition of Inside the Game. Back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Jonathan Turner expected to rejoin us at that point. And Amir, I'm sure I'll see you around. See you around.
Probably this weekend.
Sounds good. Yes, sir. Take it easy, you guys.